After several minutes, I noticed Michael standing across the room. My older brother. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red. But something felt different. I couldn't explain it. At the time I blamed the stress. The grief. The shock. Looking back now, I realize I was noticing something else. Guilt. Although I wouldn't understand that until much later. The funeral took place 3 days later. More than 400 people attended. The church parking lot overflowed onto nearby streets. Former employees traveled from different states. Old friends I hadn't seen in years showed up. The same wooden desk. The same bookshelves. The same framed photographs. Dad's favorite chair still sat near the window. For a moment I forgot he was gone. Then reality came crashing back. Michael closed the door. On the desk sat a large brown envelope. "What is this?" I asked. He pushed it toward me. "The lawyer brought it this morning." I frowned. "It's Dad's will." The words instantly made me uncomfortable. Dad had only been buried a few hours ago. The last thing I wanted to discuss was money. I sat down and opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents. Several pages. Official looking. I began reading. At first nothing seemed unusual. Then my stomach dropped. I read the pages again. Then a third time. Surely I had misunderstood. But I hadn't. According to the will, nearly everything belonged to Michael. The construction company. The investment accounts. The savings. The lake house. The land. The vehicles. Everything. I received almost nothing. Just an old pickup truck. I looked up. Confused. This can't be right. Michael didn't respond. I checked the signature. It looked like Dad's. The witnesses appeared legitimate. Everything seemed authentic. Yet something felt terribly wrong. Dad had always treated us equally. Always. I looked directly at my brother. When was this signed? About 8 months ago. 8 months. I tried remembering whether Dad had ever mentioned changing his will. He hadn't. Not once. What about Mom? I asked. A strange expression crossed Michael's face. Then he answered. The house belongs to me. For a moment I thought I had misheard him. What? The house belongs to me now. I stared at him. Our mother lives here. I know. And? He shrugged. That single shrug told me more than words ever could. Something wasn't right. Over the following weeks, my concerns grew. Then they turned into fear. Exactly 30 days after Dad's funeral, my mother received a legal notice. 90 days. The woman who had spent 3 decades helping build that home was being forced out. I remember sitting at her kitchen table while she cried. She looked smaller somehow. Older. Broken. I don't understand him anymore, she whispered. Neither did I. At first I thought grief had changed Michael. People do strange things after losing a parent. But then I started noticing other things. Little inconsistencies. Little lies. Stories that didn't match. One evening I visited Dad's company office. Only one person remained. Sarah. Dad's secretary. She had worked with him for more than 20 years. If anyone knew what Dad had been thinking before he died, it was her. When I walked inside, she looked nervous. Very nervous. I asked a simple question. Did my father ever mention changing his will? Her reaction was immediate. Her face went pale. She looked away. Then toward the door. Then back at me. That reaction told me everything. Something was wrong. Sarah? She swallowed hard. Daniel. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I don't think your father signed those documents. My heart stopped. The room suddenly felt silent. What did you say? She looked terrified. As if she had been carrying a secret for weeks. Then she opened a desk drawer. Slowly. Carefully. Inside was a thick file folder. The moment she handed it to me, I noticed her hands shaking. Across the front were 5 typed words. Original will, confidential copy. For several seconds I simply stared at it. My pulse hammered inside my ears. What is this? Then she said something that would change everything. 3 months before your father died, he discovered someone had been stealing money from the company. I froze. What? He started an internal investigation. I felt cold. Who was stealing? Sarah's eyes met mine. And in that moment, I already knew the answer before she spoke. My God. I whispered. Sarah nodded slowly. It was Michael. And suddenly I realized my father's death wasn't the only secret buried that month. It was just the beginning. The secret hidden inside the company. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at Sarah. The office suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavier. My mind kept replaying the last 4 words she had spoken. It was Michael. My older brother. The same brother who had inherited almost everything. The same brother who was trying to force our mother out of her own house. The same brother who had acted like the grieving son at our father's funeral. I shook my head. No. The word came out automatically. Not because I trusted Michael. Because I couldn't understand how things could have gotten this bad. Sarah looked exhausted. Like she had been carrying a burden she desperately wanted to put down. Daniel, I didn't want to get involved. Then why tell me now? Her eyes drifted toward Dad's office. The door remained exactly as he had left it. His name was still painted on the glass. His coat still hung on the rack beside the door. Everything looked normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Because Robert trusted me, she said quietly. And because if I stay silent now, I'm helping the wrong person. I slowly opened the file. Inside were dozens of documents. Financial records. Emails. Bank statements. Internal reports. At first they meant very little. Then I started noticing a pattern. Money was disappearing. Not huge amounts. Nothing obvious. $5,000 here. $7,000 there. $10,000 somewhere else. Spread across several years. Small enough to avoid attention. Large enough to add up. And they had. By the final page, the total exceeded $600,000. I stared at the number. My stomach turned. 600,000? Sarah nodded. That's what your father was able to confirm. I looked at her. You're telling me Michael stole $600,000 from his own family? Her silence was answer enough. I felt sick. Not because of the money. Because suddenly dozens of memories started making sense. Michael's expensive vacations. The luxury watches. The sports cars. The lifestyle he somehow maintained despite frequently complaining about cash flow. For years I had assumed he was simply more successful than I realized. Now I wasn't so sure. When did Dad find out? Sarah hesitated. About 4 months before he died. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. 4 months. My father had spent the final months of his life discovering his own son was stealing from him. I couldn't imagine the pain. I couldn't imagine the betrayal. What happened after he found out? Sarah folded her arms. He confronted him. The room became completely silent. What happened? It wasn't good. I could tell by her expression that she was choosing her words carefully. They argued. How bad? Bad enough that employees could hear them through closed doors. That wasn't like my father. Not at all. Dad almost never raised his voice. Even when he was angry, he remained calm. The idea of him screaming at someone was difficult to imagine. Unless that someone was his son. What did Michael say? I wasn't inside the office. She paused. But according to one of the project managers, Michael denied everything. Of course he did. I wasn't surprised. What happened next? Sarah looked down. Your father started preparing legal action. I felt a chill move through my body. Against his own son? He believed he had no choice. For several moments neither of us spoke. Outside, darkness covered the parking lot. The office building was nearly empty. The silence felt overwhelming. Then another thought occurred to me. If Dad was preparing legal action. I stopped. The realization was terrifying. Sarah finished the sentence for me. Then why did Michael inherit everything? Exactly. That was the question. Nothing about the situation made sense. If my father had discovered Michael was stealing money, why would he suddenly leave him the company? Why would he leave him the house? Why would he leave him practically everything? The answer was obvious. The will was fake. Or at least modified. But proving that would be another matter entirely. I looked back at the documents. What else is in here? Sarah pulled another folder from the desk. This one looked older. Worn. Used. She handed it over. These were your father's notes. I opened it carefully. Most pages contained handwritten observations. Meeting summaries. Financial concerns. Project updates. Then I found something unusual. A single page. Written entirely in Dad's handwriting. At the top were 6 words. If anything happens to me. My pulse immediately accelerated. I continued reading. The note wasn't long. But every word felt important. It described concerns about missing company funds. It mentioned Michael by name. It referenced evidence stored somewhere safe. And then came the final sentence. The sentence that changed everything. The key is inside the cabin. I read it twice. Then a third time. The cabin? Sarah nodded. The lake house. My father owned a small cabin near a lake about 2 hours away. Our family had spent summers there for decades. Fishing. Swimming. Barbecues. It was one of my favorite places in the world. And apparently it contained something important. Something my father wanted hidden. The problem was that Michael now owned it. At least according to the new will. I folded the paper carefully. We need to go there. Sarah immediately shook her head. No. What? No, Daniel. She looked genuinely afraid. You don't understand. Then explain. Her expression darkened. Michael has already been there. The room suddenly felt cold. When? The day after your father's funeral. My heart sank. Of course he had. If Michael knew about the investigation, the cabin would be one of the first places he'd search. How do you know? Because security cameras caught him. I stared at her. Security cameras. Dad had installed cameras around company properties years ago. Including the lake house. Do you have the footage? I did. My stomach tightened. Did? Sarah looked uncomfortable. It disappeared. Of course it did. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions. For the next hour, we reviewed documents. By the time we finished, one thing was clear. Michael had been preparing for something long before our father's death. Several records had vanished. Hard drives were missing. Financial files had disappeared. Even certain paper documents had been removed. Someone was cleaning up evidence. And they were doing it carefully. As I prepared to leave, Sarah stopped me. Daniel. I turned. Be careful. I forced a weak smile. I appreciate the concern. I'm serious. Something about her tone made me pause. This isn't just about money anymore. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated. Then she said something I still think about today. Your father wasn't afraid of losing the company. I waited. He was afraid of what Michael was becoming. The drive home felt longer than usual. The entire time, my thoughts raced. Every mile brought more questions. Every answer led to another mystery. When I finally arrived home, it was nearly midnight. I expected to find my apartment empty. Instead, someone was sitting inside. Waiting. The moment I stepped through the door, I froze. My mother sat at the kitchen table. Her face was pale. Terrified. And in front of her sat a cardboard box. I immediately knew something was wrong. Mom? She looked up. Her eyes were filled with fear. The kind of fear I'd never seen before. What happened? She pointed at the box. Nothing else. Just pointed. Slowly, I walked forward. My heart pounded harder with every step. The box was old. Dirty. Sealed with tape. There was no return address. No label. No explanation. Only my name written across the top. Daniel. I looked at my mother. Who brought this? Her voice shook. It was on the porch. A knot formed in my stomach. Carefully, I opened the box. Inside was a single object. Nothing else. No note. No message. Just one item. A framed family photograph. A picture taken at the lake cabin 15 years earlier. Me. Mom. Dad. And Michael. But someone had scratched through every face. Except Michael's. And taped to the glass was a small handwritten message. 6 words. Words that instantly made my blood run cold. Stop looking before it's too late. The warning I should have taken seriously. I stared at the photograph for what felt like an eternity. Nobody spoke. The apartment was completely silent. The only sound came from the ticking clock above the kitchen doorway. Tick. 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 Normally, it was the kind of sound you never noticed. That night, it sounded deafening. My mother looked terrified. I couldn't blame her. A few hours earlier, I had learned that my father had been secretly investigating my brother. Now an anonymous package had appeared on my doorstep containing a threat. And not a subtle one. Someone wanted me to stop digging. Immediately. I carefully lifted the photograph from the box. The frame was old. The glass had been scratched repeatedly. Every family member's face had been crossed out. Except Michael's. The message remained taped to the front. I read it again. Then again. The handwriting wasn't familiar. At least not immediately. But something about it bothered me. Something felt oddly deliberate. Like whoever wrote it wanted me to recognize it. My mother finally broke the silence. Daniel. Her voice shook. Do you think Michael sent it? I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her she was imagining things. But neither of us believed that anymore. Too many strange things had happened already. Too many coincidences. I don't know, I said. And technically, that was true. I didn't know. But deep down, I suspected exactly who was behind it. The problem was proving it. That night I barely slept. Every noise outside made me look toward the window. Every set of headlights passing through the parking lot made me wonder if someone was watching. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe my instincts were trying to tell me something. Around 6 in the morning, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name I didn't expect. Sarah. I answered immediately. Sarah? Her voice sounded urgent. Daniel, where are you? Home. Good. The relief in her voice caught my attention. What happened? There was a pause. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Someone broke into the office last night. I sat upright. What? The accounting department. My pulse quickened. What was taken? Only one thing. I already knew the answer before she said it. The files your father kept on Michael. I closed my eyes. Of course. They were removing evidence. Just her name written across the front. Inside was a single piece of paper. Maybe it had worked before. Of course they weren't. No suspects. Her eyes widened. Think about it. Someone knows you're investigating. I understood her point. The cabin might not just contain evidence. Memories flooded back instantly. Back when everything felt normal. The lock had been broken. Whoever came here wasn't interested in stealing valuables. For nearly an hour, I searched room after room. The same chair where he used to drink coffee every morning while watching the lake. The real secret was somewhere else. Then it stayed behind me for 5 miles. Maybe it was coincidence. Someone was following me. The road ahead was nearly empty. No other vehicles. I fought to keep control. I pressed the accelerator. The SUV stayed right behind me. The SUV lost control. I kept driving. By the time I left the station, it was nearly dark. You know Robert Carter? The sun had disappeared below the horizon. No hidden treasure. Contracts. Tax records. Everything. Increasingly dangerous. She sounded terrified. Daniel, Where are you? My stomach tightened. Why? Someone broke into my house. My blood ran cold. What? They were looking for something. I stood up instantly. Are you okay? Yes. But listen carefully. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The police just found something. What? There was a long pause. The kind that makes your heart stop. Then she said 5 words. 5 words that changed everything. Your father wasn't alone. I froze. What do you mean? Another pause. Then the answer. The answer that shattered everything I thought I knew. The night your father died, someone was with him. Locked the door. The timestamp showed 10:42 p.m. The driver's door opened. But their body language told a story. What? Oh my God. The door was locked. The entries covered nearly 2 years. Daily observations. The missing money. The same lawyer who claimed everything was legitimate. In the months that followed, life slowly improved. The stolen company assets were recovered. Most importantly, my father's name was cleared. The truth finally came out. Not everyone believed justice had been served. Some people thought the punishment wasn't enough. Maybe they were right. But one thing was certain. The lies were over. About a year later, I visited the lake cabin alone. The same cabin where this entire mystery had started. The sun was setting over the water. The lake was calm. Peaceful. Exactly the way Dad loved it. I sat in his favorite chair on the porch. The same chair where I'd found the key to storage unit 214. For a while, I just watched the water. Thinking. Remembering. Missing him. Then I pulled out the final page from his journal. A sentence I'd read 100 times. A sentence that meant more to me now than ever before. Character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when people think nobody is watching. For the first time in a very long time, I smiled. Because despite everything that happened, despite the betrayal, the greed, the lies, the threats, the truth had won. And in the end, that's exactly what my father would have wanted. The end.